Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, the Witcher-themed card game, and today we are going to check out the new Draft Early Access mode. As for what a draft is, that is normally a game mode in which you have several people choosing from a limited number of cards, and once one person takes his card, that card is no longer available to the other people. I think this is going to be very similar to what previously was the Arena game mode. However, in that game mode, it was just you yourself choosing between a limited number of cards, and there was no opposing player choosing whichever cards you left on the table aspect to it, so I think we are likely to see that happen this time around, though admittedly, I'm not sure. So, I'm going to get the chance to explore it with you. I'm looking forward to it. So we lead off here by choosing our leader ability. I think, in all likelihood, even though these are, of course, abilities that are usually tied to a specific faction, Carapace being monsters, Battle Trance being Skellige, and Imperial Formation being Nilfgaard, that does not necessarily mean that we would be playing a monster, Skellige, or Nilfgaardian deck. This is purely just the ability, and then we will get a combination of cards from any of a number of factions. So one thing to bear in mind is that generally speaking, with the arena game mode, the rule of thumb was that you want to pick things that are strong regardless of the circumstances. As soon as you start getting into niche scenarios, then it's really hard to plan around that when you don't know which cards you're going to get. So in total, Carapace gives us 9 strength across those 3 charges there, in addition to Veil, which is a little bit harder to quantify as to just how valuable that might be. Battle Trance gives us on net 6, however it does also heal us whenever we play an alchemy card. That is, though, perhaps a little bit of a risk, a little bit more niche, because we don't know how many, if any, alchemy cards we will get, other than this guaranteed one that we get from using this leader ability here. And we don't necessarily know if our units will be damaged at the time, so that part, I think we probably don't want to rely on that. And then Imperial Formation, for the 2 boost and 3 charges, that means that it is, of course, boosting us by 3 less than what we would get in total from Carapace. But it does allow us to move that soldier to the top of our deck. We don't necessarily know if we're going to have any soldiers. I mean, it's probably a pretty safe bet that we'll have at least one. But will it be an amazing soldier that we absolutely want to have at the top of our deck? Maybe. Maybe not. So I think Carapace is probably the most simple and straightforward. Let's go with this one. I think it's probably the safest bet. Okay, so now we choose our next cards here, and we can go with Allgod, boost 3 units in our deck by 2. So again, I think the general strategy we want to have here is that we take cards that are good, regardless of the circumstances, so things that will boost no matter what's happening on the playing field, things that will deal damage, regardless of what's happening. So Allgod is pretty good in that respect, because boosting 3 units in our deck by 2, I mean, as long as we're drawing those cards, we get that benefit. If we don't draw those cards, then of course that means that we won't. And then Fincy is fantastic if we can get a lot of coins, because whenever we gain coins, she gets boosted by 1 for each coin gained. But that is something that is very specific to syndicates. So if we made a point of picking up as many coins as possible, then that could be very useful to have her, yes. But that is something that is hard to rely on. So I'm thinking this is niche enough that maybe we would prefer Allgod to her. Then, oh, we have a scenario here. The Skellige one, which is very oriented towards playing druids, and gives us, oh, if we had gone for the Skellige ability, then this might have worked out well, because I do believe some of these cards that it has a spawn are, in fact, alchemy cards. Of course, we didn't go that route. Does that influence whether or not we should take this card? I mean, it is probably the best card here, but it is fairly niche in that we are, of course, relying on having those druid cards to play. So we can make a point of trying to pick more of those going forward, but of course, there's no guarantee that we will see them at all. So for that reason, I think we keep it simple, go with Allgod. Then we choose a set. Ooh, okay, so wasn't expecting this. We have 3 choices: organic, offense, or order. So Wispess Tribute, when we play her in the range row, means we play an organic card from our deck. And then, oh, it comes along with other organic cards. Okay, so Natural Selection, we deal 4 damage. Then for any overkill damage, we'd spawn a Throne, which I believe is a 1 strength unit. Then Hideous Feast, damage an enemy unit by 3, and then boost an allied unit by 3. So basically, this is a way to guarantee that you are taking, looks like the top card will always be sort of the fundamental card, and then these will be the support cards here. Because previously, to compare this to arena mode again, where it would just be taking 1 card at a time and none of these bunches, none of these sets, you would take something like Wispess Tribute, and you'd say, okay, I really hope that we get more organic cards in the future, but I have no way of knowing for certain, and you could get really unlucky and never find them. Or you could get really lucky and get a bunch, or a really strong one, and that way, when you do get Wispess, then you can make a point of playing that strong card. So this is a way of making sure that your cards at least have some synergies with one another. So now let's look offense, and we lead off with Prince Anses, and that's interesting because we saw that in Organic, we had 100% monster units, and of course we did take a monster leader ability. But in offense, we have Anses, who is Northern Realms. He has Formation, which means that if we play him in the melee row, he's able to use his order ability immediately, whereas if we play him in the range row, he will take a turn to do so, but will also get boosted by 1. And when he is boosted, that's what Inspired means, then he will duel an enemy unit, rather than deal 4 damage. Duel means that he will take turns dealing damage to the opponent, and if he doesn't take them out immediately, then the opponent will attack him back, and they'll keep on going until someone gets destroyed. So that can be very strong if we can make a point of boosting him as much as possible. So that makes sense that that is the offensive setup. Goes along with the Cyclops, destroy an adjacent allied unit, and damage an enemy unit by its power. So it does mean getting rid of one of our units. If we could make a point of having units that have Death Wish, ones that we are okay with destroying, then that would work really well. However, if we don't, then that might mean that we are making a pretty big sacrifice there, and it just comes down to, are we willing to get rid of one of our units to damage an opponent's? Maybe, maybe not. That's feeling a little bit niche. Then we have the Wyvern, which is Thrive, which means that when we play cards that are stronger than it, it gets boosted, and it deals damage when we play in the range row. That's a little bit more versatile. So I feel okay with that one, but I feel like Cyclops, at least, is somewhat niche. Now let's look at order. So we have Yennefer Conjurer, and she has 5 base strength and will deal 1 damage to the highest enemy unit, has a cooldown of 1, meaning we can use it once per turn. And I like that a lot, because that is quite versatile. That means that as long as our opponent has a unit out there, we can consistently deal damage. Doesn't matter what the scenario is. Don't have to worry about, do we have a unit we're okay with destroying? Can we boost our unit here? Do we have organic cards in our deck? I mean, that one's probably a pretty safe bet, because we'll, of course, know that we'll have these buried in there somewhere, as long as we haven't played them earlier on. Next, we have the Kedwenny Revenant, which deals 1 damage to a unit. And if we can take a unit out with that, then we spawn a copy of a Kedwenny Revenant and summon it to the row. So this one, if we can get a lot of enemies, ideally enemies, with low strength, then we can get rid of them, spawn more Kedwenny Revenants, and then turn into a chain reaction there of just non-stop Kedwenny Revenants. So there is a bit of a synergy between Yennefer and the Kedwenny Revenants. However, Yennefer is specifically dealing damage to just the highest enemy unit. So that means that unless the highest enemy unit has 2 strength, not going to be enough to set up the Kedwenny Revenant here. Then the last spot is the Siege Support. Give 1 charge to an allied unit, or boost an allied unit by 1. You can also give an allied unit Zeal. I'm thinking this could be an interesting setup for Yennefer, because then we can get a little bit more damage on her. I'm thinking we go with Order here. I'm intrigued. Okay, and then we have more sets. So we have Reinforcements, which means we can spawn a new copy of a bronze unit that we have. So that means wouldn't be able to use it on Yennefer or Allgod, but we could use it on, say, Kedwenny Revenant, and we're saying how we might want to make a point of trying to get as many of these Kedwenny Revenants as we can, and this could be a way of doing just that. We could also boost an allied unit by 3 and give it 2 charges. Ooh. More setup for Yennefer, perhaps, and smoke them out. Spawn 2 volunteers in an allied row and boost them by 1. So volunteers are some pretty straightforward units there that I'm not sure that's going to be much of a difference maker. Let's see what the other alternatives are with the pre-buff. Veil and Zeal. Damage an enemy unit by 3 at the end of your turn. If we haven't used our order, then we boost a random Scoia'tael unit in our hand by 1. This would be a very strong option if we were sure that we would have a Scoia'tael unit in our hand, which I'm not sure we would. That is perhaps a little too niche. But we do have more Scoia'tael units that come in this bundle here, so let's see. Shiru, Zeal, Order, destroy self, and all other units with the same power. That's devious, but awfully difficult to pull off. So I'm assuming what the strategy here would be to make sure that you have this unit with the same strength as many opposing units as possible, and then just take them all out, bring them down with them. But that seems like trying to match up the amount of strength that he has versus the amount of strength that our opponent has when we don't have perfect control over which units we're going to have in our deck. That seems like that's wishful thinking. Hawker Smuggler would also boost units by 1 that are in our hand when we play it in the melee row. So it does do a lot of boosting our own units, yes. But this one is probably the most versatile in that as long as we play it in the melee row, it's going to boost something in our hand. It doesn't need to be Scoia'tael, unlike Dunka here. And this one, I'm not sure we'd be able to pull this off at all. So I'm hesitant to go this route here. Let's look at lock. So Kurt, in the melee row, we can lock a unit. That could be useful. Or in the range row, we can purify a unit, so basically the opposite of lock. And we don't necessarily know if our opponent is going to have a unit that is really powerful with some kind of ability that we want to lock down with a lock. But that's probably a relatively safe bet. Then the Van Morlehem Hunter can also lock if we played in the range row, or can give bleed if we played in the melee row. So a little bit of versatility there. And then more lock with the Alba Cavalry. That one does need to go in the melee row. I'm not too concerned about us needing to play cards in a certain row. That is a ton of lock, though. I mean, that is the name of it, of course, yes, but I feel like having 2 lock units, maybe, but 3? That's a lot. Maybe we could just do that and rely on Yennefer to slowly whittle away at our opponent's strength. And, yeah, lock them down with the lock. Let's give it a shot. I did like the Warfare as well. That probably would have been a strong candidate as well. Let's see. Knickers best boy. What? There's 3 Knickers! What? So this unit may raid the battlefield to aid us in battle at any point in time. Basically, Knickers sticks in our deck and randomly will enter the playing field when we least expect it. So hard to rely on that, but it is a sneaky way of getting some additional strength out on the playing field without your opponent expecting it. Of course, they'll have no idea that we have Knickers in our deck, let alone 3 of them. And it is a gold card, so under normal circumstances, you would not be allowed to have more than 1 of them. So 3 is crazy. So that's intriguing, Mimi, and I don't know just how effective it might be, but it's tempting. It's tempting. Then, oh man. Okay, so we have another option to use organic here. We could deal 6 damage, or boost an allied unit by 6. I do kind of like that, because at least if we are trying to complement what we had going with our Kedwani Revenants, that could be helpful, because these guys, they only work at their best when we have opponents with very low strength, just 1, and so against big opponents, that's going to be tough. We can whittle down their HP a little bit with Yennefer, yes, but something big like a Parasite might be helpful. And Arrakis Venom, similar in that regard. And Spores to reset power. Ooh, this is tempting. Yes. And we have more lock. More lock. So I don't think this is necessary. I think we have already... I mean, we could go for it and just be almost guaranteed to lock all of our opponent's units. There's perhaps something to be said for that. I think this one is probably the most synergistic with what we have going on at the moment. This one is the memes. So this is really tempting. I really do want to try that, but I think this one makes the most sense to do. Let's go with organic. Then we have crimes. That is usually something that is affiliated with just Syndicate. We have Intimidate 2, which means that it would get boosted by 2 every time we use a crime. And then Tribute, meaning if we spend 3 coins, we gain immunity, so it can't be targeted. That's interesting. And then it comes with a couple of crimes here. Smuggle for 3 profit, so gain 3 coins. And spawn a Flaming Rose Footman in an allied row. I believe that's a 3 strength card with no special abilities. Congregation. Spawn 2 Firesworn Zealots. Okay, these are 2 strength units, yeah. Whereas these are 3. And if there's already a Firesworn unit, then spawn 1 more. Okay. This could work. It certainly synergizes with the set, however, doesn't synergize much with what we have in the other cards that we've picked already. So I'm not sure that works that well. Bleeding. This could work, though. Crimson Curse. Spawn Blood Moon on an enemy row for 5 turns, then spawn 2 Ekimaras in the opposite row. What exactly is Blood Moon? At the start of the owner's turn, give a random unit this row bleeding 2. If the unit is already bleeding, damage it by 2 instead. That sounds like that could work quite well with all the damage we've been loading up on. I like that. And then we spawn some Ekimaras in the opposite row, so we're getting a little bit of strength ourselves as well. That's the big card in this one. Then the Iron Falcon Knife Juggler low strength unit gives 2 bleeding to 2 random units. Some damage. Not bad. But nothing to write home about either. Bloody Good Friends. Insanity, I believe, means we can play this card, and we can use its ability, even if we don't have the 1 coin to use this fee here. Just in the process, we will damage them by 1. And if we were to use this ability, we would give an enemy unit bleeding for 1 turn. If it's boosted, damage it by 1 instead. 4 damage, of course. That is the theme here. So I do like that. Seems as though, yeah, all this stuff is very Syndicate themed. Oh. I was wondering if each round was affiliated with one kind of faction, because this certainly has a strong Syndicate theme to it. Maybe less so with the bleeding part. But I don't think so, based on what we saw in the previous rounds. We saw things that were a mixture of different factions, so I think bleeding does make the most sense here for sure. Let's go with that. Okay, now we can go with even more bleeding with Savage Bears. So gain 1 charge for each Savage Bear in your graveyard. Well, if we have 3 of them, we could have several in our graveyard. Give bleeding 2 to an enemy unit. Charge 1. Okay, so yeah, lots of bleed. Does have Zeal. And don't we have 1 card that can also give charges, the siege support, potentially? So that could work somewhat well. There's no major card here that is going to be a real difference maker. These are all solid, unlike, say, Gontor Dim here, which gives an enemy unit doomed and then follows up by destroying a doomed enemy unit. I do like that a lot, being able to outright get rid of one of our opponent's strongest cards, because we have lots of sources of damage, maybe not a ton of upfront damage. Like, Parasite is our single biggest source of damage, but other than that, it's just little bits and pieces here and there from things like Yennefer. But being able to just delete a card, that sounds quite good. And it comes with even more damage still from the Lyrian Arbalist. Gain 1 charge whenever we play a card with Order. You have Order? You don't. You don't. How many cards do we have with Order? Is that realistic that we would get much out of that? Kidwani Revenant does. You do Siege Support. You don't. You don't. I mean, we have a few, but not a lot, so I'm not sure that's going to make a huge difference. Then Battering Ram. Move Battering Ram to the melee row. Then damage the highest enemy unit by 3. So, again, general theme here would be damage. Alternatively, we could go with coins, which I think was one of the alternatives in the previous round as well, but we turned that down. Board 9, so if we have the maximum number of coins, because that is the maximum, then we summon this unit from our deck or graveyard to a random allied row. So this is another one that can randomly raid the battlefield. I suppose not quite randomly, but we have passed up on some opportunities to get coins in the past. I'm not sure that's terribly realistic for us to get all the way up to 9. And would we have a source here, perhaps? Igor the Hook? Well, 6 strength is pretty good. Insanity means that we could still use this ability even if we didn't have the number of coins, but we would take damage in the process. And we spawn and summon a random base copy of a bronze allied unit. Ooh. Base copy of a bronze allied unit. So we could choose which one we wanted? That's tempting if we were to, say, do something like spawn more of our Kedwani Revenants. That could potentially work. And then Tax Collector, this is the one that gives us the coins. I feel like ideally we'd have a little bit more in the way of coin generation if we were to go the coin route. So if we were to go with this, we'd want to make sure that we take coins at least one more time. I think this is more synergistic with what we have going on at the moment. So let's stick with our theme. Then we have Tactics. Destroy the unit with the highest base power. Ooh. Okay, we do have something kind of like that already. Did we not take that in the previous round with Gontor Dim? I suppose it's not necessarily the highest base power unit, but that's likely where we'd try to use this. That is perhaps another good way to do something like that. Then War Council. look at the first 3 cards in the top of our deck and play one of them. Gives us some, ooh, yeah, flexibility. Being able to play card of our choosing if we don't have what we want in our hand. Otherwise, Assassination, that's also a lot of damage there. This is tempting. Oh, look at this, though. In offense, we have Keltellus, who is a card that I think normally you would have to build an entire deck around. Every allied turn, on turn end, destroy the lowest unit on the side with the most units. So the idea here is that I think oftentimes you would want to pair this up with having some consume units so that you can limit the number of cards you have on your side, and presumably that means your opponent will have more on their side, so that every time your turn ends, your opponent will have one of their units destroyed. However, I think we're doing exactly the opposite of that right now with our Kidwani Revenant in particular. We were talking about trying to have this multiply, and so for that reason, I think this is probably not a great fit for us. We're also going to be using a lot of damage, so we might be deleting some of our opponent's cards, which would, again, make it more likely that we have more units than our opponent. So as tempting as it may be to try to take this, I just don't think it works with what we have going on at the moment. For Warriors, ooh, I have seen you spoil many a match when I've played against opponents that have this card. Deploy and damage an enemy unit by 1. Repeat until the target is damaged. So the idea there is that basically you play this and target a unit that has been boosted like crazy. So you have a unit that starts out at 4 base strength but has been boosted all the way up to 10. Then you play this and it goes all the way down to 3 strength, so that at that point it's been damaged. So that is, again, another way of loading up on more damage. Necker Warrior has Thrive, so that is very different. That is just meaning that it gets stronger whenever we play a stronger unit than this. And On-Crate Raiders is some more damage from this one here, and Veteran means that the later round we play it, the higher base strength it has. So this is also something that is somewhat similar. One thing to bear in mind here is that I want to make sure we have enough units, because I think we've been taking our fair share of special cards. Let's just take a quick count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, not a ton, but these are all special cards here. So I want to make sure that we have at least have some units. I think you could go with either of these. Let's try Tactics. I think that one at least initially jumped out at me. Then, what? Foglet is one of them? Does seem like there's a lot of these sets that are just based on one specific card, so the idea here is that it has Death Wish, summon all copies of this unit from our deck onto the playing field, and so by having 3 of them, one of them goes down when you play it, and you bring the other 2 back. So that is, yes, good if you can make a point of deleting this card here. We did see early on we had a card that we could have taken that would have destroyed one of our own units. Did we end up taking that? I don't think we did. I think it was one of the Cyclopses. We did not go that route. So that would have been a potential synergy there, but we went a different direction. For Nature, we could go Shaping Nature, Echo, meaning that we play it once, and then we'll get it at the top of our deck, a copy of the same card next round. So choose one, boost an allied unit by 6 and give it Veil, or boost an allied unit by 8, or boost an allied unit by 5 and give it Vitality 5. Okay, all those are potentially quite good. And we do have some damage with Nature's Rebuke. Boost an random allied Treant by 2 is the nice little bonus if you do manage to get a kill with it. Don't think we have any Treants at the moment because we are rather light on Scoia'tael. And then Tempering. Boost an ally by 5. It's a dwarf. It also gets 2 armor, which is also a nice bonus, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to take advantage of that because I don't think we have any dwarves either. The big things, though, I think are still the damage on this and the boosting on this. So we would still, of course, benefit from that. So this could work. For Lock, we have Lock an enemy unit with 5 or less power and seize it, meaning that we will bring it back over to our side. That's quite tempting. Of course, it does require that the unit is weak enough to make this happen. But 5 is a relatively high threshold, nonetheless. I mean, most cards start out with 5 or less power, so only when a card gets boosted a lot would this not work in all likelihood, or the rare occasion when something starts out with higher than 5 base strength. Then here we can seize a locked enemy unit. Oh, we do have other sources of lock? That could work. We have you can lock, and then I think we have at least one other source of lock. And Diamond Shackles would do it too. So, yeah, this is tempting me quite a bit. Let's go this way. And I think we have 2 more to choose from here. Dun Banner's another one that is consistent, in that we are getting 3 of the same card here. When Dun Banner receives a boost, summon all copies of it from our deck to this row. So, similar idea to what we saw with the Foglets last time around. We get 1 of them out here, and we can potentially bring out the rest of them. I don't think we have that much boosting. We are mostly working on damage here. I think we probably don't go that route. Then we have another Keltella setup. I think, once more, we probably want to pass on this because we are likely to have more units than our opponent, what with our damage and potentially multiple rounds of our Kedwenny Revenant. That would leave us with Soldiers and Bloody Flail. Give an enemy unit bleeding for 8 turns. For each soldier you control, decrease the bleeding duration by 1 and damage by 1 instead. 8 bleed does mean that in order to take full advantage of that, we would basically need to play this card immediately, because that's a lot of turns for all that damage to finally take effect. So we would like to have some soldiers out there. How many soldiers do we have? I'm not sure we have that many, to tell you the truth. So I think that makes it a little bit tricky to pull it off. I mean, not to say it's impossible. We would just need to make a point of playing it almost immediately once we get it. Because, okay, there's 1. You're also a soldier. Okay, I guess toward the latter end we have a few. Okay, so it's not out of the question. Then we would get a few more soldiers along with it. Now the Spearman, damage an enemy unit by 1, increase the damage by 1 for each adjacent soldier. Or if we play this one by itself on a row, then it gets boosted by 1 every turn. I think we have enough units that this is very unlikely to work. This one, I mean, we have some soldiers, yes, but I don't think we're going to have enough that this is making a huge difference here. And even then, I just don't think that's a very strong card. I think that of all the strongest cards we see here, this is not a great one. Overall, I think these might be the worst sets that we've had to choose from. Keltellis, maybe this would have been the best set here, but of course, like we said, it just, for our deck, doesn't work all that well. So, I don't love what I'm seeing here. Maybe we try going with the Dun Banners. Do we at least have some sources of boosting? Well, we do have our leader ability. So that is a reliable source. We could say, play Dun Banner, use our leader ability, and that will summon all of the ones from our deck. I suppose that could work. Let's go with that, then. Okay, then this looks like it'll be our last one here. This is our stratagem, so this is what we start out with if we go first in a match. You can trigger a bronze allied unit's Death Wish ability. This would work with monsters, but I'm not sure we have enough monsters to pull this off. Do we have any that have Death Wish abilities? I'm not even sure if we do. We may not. So I'm thinking we probably don't want to go that route there. I think just about all of our monster cards are special cards, not units, let alone units with Death Wish. Then Basilisk Venom, poison a random enemy unit. If we poison twice, then we can delete a unit, but I don't think we have any other sources of poison, so this also isn't doing much good for us. We can boost a unit in our hand by 3. I think, by process of elimination, we almost have to go this route here. Let's choose that. And now, we are ready to go. So, I guess we are technically monsters, because we have Carapace. Sure. Let's throw on a different card back real quick. Maybe we'll go with some Halloween theme carried over. And let's jump in. So it does seem as though we did not have anyone else picking the cards that we did not opt to pick. At least, not that I could tell. So I think the biggest difference was that, like we were saying before, we are getting to choose between sets of cards, whereas previously when there was the old arena mode, you were taking one card at a time, and therefore there's a lot more risk that the cards would not synergize with one another. Okay, so we're going against Northern Realms for whatever that means. I mean, the leader ability, yes, that means something, but cards we'll find in our opponent's deck could be anything from any faction. So, we have 1 Dun Banner. We want to make sure that we only ever have 1 of them, because the rest of them we will summon from our deck whenever we boost this. So I like that. We do have the Kedwenny Revenant, so we want to have some damage to complement that. We could with Parasite. War Council gives us some flexibility with our card draw. Contour Dim is some nice damage. We have the Lock. We can make this work, but I don't think we do right now. So for that reason, let's get rid of you. And then, of course, we draw into it. Spores, I think, might be one of our weaker cards, resetting a unit. Let's try getting rid of you. We don't want 2 Dun Banners. Okay, and Yennefer was a big card, so that's a good one for us to draw into. What do we lead off with? We could try to play a short round here and say, go with Dun Banner, boost it almost immediately, and just play 3 cards and then pass and see if we can catch our opponent a little bit off guard by trying to sprint. And we could follow up with, say, a Parasite soon thereafter, and basically delete whatever card they try to play at the beginning. That could work. Because otherwise we have cards like Yennefer that we want to play in long rounds, so we would want to play you early, if and when we do play you. I'm thinking we start off with you. And, of course, Carapace, our leader ability, we want to be mindful of when we do choose to use that. But I think this could be an occasion for that to happen. We'll try to save most of the other ones. So I'll play in the melee row because, at least against Northern Realms, they might have catapults or trebuchets that could deal damage in the range row. Of course, we don't necessarily know that that's what we're going to see here. Okay, so you played this unit here that gives armor to a unit in your hand. There are some units that get particularly powerful with additional armor, but that's fairly rare. I'm thinking you're seemingly playing for a relatively long round here, because this is not exactly a terribly strong card. It's a little bit of a setup card. So what if we were to, say, use something like Assassination to get rid of it here? Because at best, this is as strong as Parasite. At worst, it is worse. On this occasion, it's doing everything we need to do. It's taking out this card here. Let's delete that. And we will, of course, use this at some point in time. We'll want to use it next turn, because I'm thinking that we're probably only going to play one more card, and then we're going to pass. We're going for the short round. And then next round, we'll save Yennefer, maybe Crimson Curse, and we should... I'm thinking we play Allgod here. And we want to boost cards in our deck. The ones that we, well... Ideally, we would have something that would make it so that we know we can draw those specific cards, which we don't. But let's play you, because this is a setup card that we want to play in early round, I think. And then, what do we want to boost? Do we know of anything in particular that would benefit from a boost? Not sure. I mean, these are not really any of our strongest cards. We have most of our strong cards in our deck. The exception being this. Why don't we boost you? Why don't we boost, say, you? Because you two work well together. Oh, and then we boost one more. You're also one of our stronger cards, so sure, we'll do that. Let's boost a card in our hand. Let's make it Yennefer. And then I'm thinking this is likely going to be our last turn here, because we have a pretty large lead at the moment. So I'm assuming our opponent would need more than one turn to pass us. And based on what they're playing here, that does seem to be the case. So, we're going to pass here, and then our opponent will presumably, or either they will pass immediately as well, and take the round 1 loss, or they will take the bait and try to play more cards to surpass us. It would take them, of course, at least 1, if not 2 or 3, well, probably not 3 cards, but maybe 2 cards. They do have some abilities they've yet to use, so if they use those, yeah, they probably only need 1 more card to play. But that does mean that we will be riding a little bit of card advantage into round 2 and maybe even 3. That's the idea there. Oh, and you're playing one of your strongest cards as well. That seems like that was probably overkill. I was thinking you would just play the weakest card you could play while still eking out a round 1 victory there, so I think we lucked out in that regard. That was, I would argue, a misplay on their part there. They should have saved that for when they really needed it. And we did draw into at least one of the cards, 2 of the cards now that we boosted. So you seize a lock unit. We do have a source of lock now, so that's big. We can use the War Council to perhaps make a point of trying to draw that one other card that we boosted, which would be the Alba Cavalry. Do we want the Spores? Do we need the Spores? We would like to have, say, some damage to set you up. We have a little bit from, I mean, Yennefer, for sure, and Parasite. And Crimson Curse, I suppose that could work. And this is another source of locks, yeah, so we definitely have plenty of that. Just a little bit conflicted about Spores, and maybe even Diamond Radium Shackles. We have enough lock that we don't need it. That's not great, though. Okay, a little bit of damage. The Arbalist, take your pick. I mean, we're kind of swapping around some of our weakest cards. I'll be interested to see what method our opponent uses here, because they did, of course, win round 1. But they did, of course, use another card, more than we did, to pull that off. This is a very strong card here, the Draco Turtle. Though this is one that would have perhaps made most sense to have used along with the card that they finished the previous round with. So, we want to make sure that we try to take it out without removing its armor would be great. And we do potentially have a way to do that with, say, bleed. Or we could outright damage it. Now, it has enough armor that wouldn't do us much good. We could use Gaunter or Dim to doom and then follow up with a kill. Or we could even lock it and seize it. Let's try that. I think we need to go with you. So we lock. Then we'll end our turn. We hope you don't have any sources of purification. Otherwise, that would complicate matters quite a bit. We have another... Oh, no, this is not our other source of lock. You also took Dunbanner, and you do have a way of boosting it as well. So, similar to what we did last time round. But I'm guessing you are not going to see this part come in here. Okay, so we need to play you in the melee row. Let's make sure we do that. And it does take a turn to pull that off, because it is an order, not a deploy ability. So that does mean that we are potentially a little bit vulnerable here. This card right here certainly will have a target on its back. If our opponent does have any source of damage, then they will try to pull that off here. So they pass, which makes sense, because at the end of this round, they will draw 3 more cards. That will bring us up to the maximum. So we probably could have seen that one coming and maybe should have played a little bit more conservatively. Didn't have to go with some of our best cards here. But let's at least finish our combo here, and maybe that means that for our last card, we'll play one of our weaker units. Because let's start off with this. We'll seize you. That's already enough for us to take this round. So that means that we want to finish off with just what is basically our weakest card here. Could potentially be Spores or the Arbalist. This deals 1 damage, or gets a charge to deal 1 damage whenever we play a unit with orders. Do we have more of those around here? We have at least 1, 2, 3. Yeah, for that reason, I think Spores is probably our worst card here. We have a few ways to make sure that Lyrian Arbalist gets more charges. So we'll take round 2. And I believe that means that we will both be sitting on 10 cards. So we'll both draw 3 here. Okay, and we have another source of lock. Could be useful. Of course, we can't seize a lock unit anymore, but still, being able to prevent our opponent from using the abilities on one of their units, that might be nice. We do not have the coins to use this unless we were to trigger the Insanity. But it is potentially another source of damage. You, I'd argue, are maybe one of our other weaker units. Let's just take a look at what we have remaining here. Is there anything that we really want to have? This would probably be our best card we have remaining. Oh, or this. Okay, yeah, we would like to try to find a way to get one of those in our hand here. We don't want to get rid of our lock, so let's try getting rid of you. And you. And, well, we didn't get what we were looking for, unfortunately. We do go first here. And I'm thinking what we do is we actually lead off with the Arbalist, because this gets stronger every time we play a card with orders. And we have a bunch of cards with orders, and so we want to make sure this goes down first. Yennefer is another card that we want to make sure we play early, because every turn she'll get to do some damage. But, of course, there are no enemies out right now, so there's no one to damage at the moment. So either way, we could go with either Yennefer or the Lyrian Arbalist. Though I think Yennefer, if we were to play her, our opponent would immediately try to take her out. She has 8 strength, so that'd be easier said than done, yes, but if our opponent does have any damage and really wants to destroy a unit, then I'd rather they do it the Lyrian Arbalist than Yennefer. And there you see, here's some of it. So, what do we do from here? Can't take you out with this damage unless we were to, say, damage you with the Lyrian Arbalist first. That would do it, though we would not get the additional death blow to trigger, or at least we'd get no benefit out of it because there are no adjacent units. So probably thinking we don't go for that reason. Could say go for Yennefer here. Like I was saying, I mean, we do still want to play her as early as possible. So why don't we split our units a little bit between different rows. Now I'm thinking we might want to boost our Lyrian Arbalist here. Let's see, when this becomes exposed, it damages a random enemy unit by 2. So what we'd like to do is ideally make sure that we can deal 4 damage in one fell swoop. Or just not get rid of its armor and, say, do 1 damage with the Arbalist and then 3 with this, so that way the exposed ability never triggers. Well, now you're shielding it and giving it vitality. Presumably that's what you're about to do. Yes? So that does make it a little bit more difficult for us to deal the damage, although Parasite is now starting to become a little bit more relevant, as would Crimson Curse, to tell you the truth. I mean, we probably... This is for 5 turns, so we want to play this relatively early so that we get the benefit from all those turns. We could just use Contour Dim to delete this card here. I mean, this wasn't originally going to be one of their stronger cards. I'm a little bit surprised that they are investing so much in it right now. We could also proceed to lock it, so that we aren't concerned about it doing its exposed thing, though still think it's likely that our opponent has something that's better than this. So, thinking what we go for here is let's go with the Crimson Curse. Well, let's save this until we know which row our opponent's going to play more cards in. Let's lock you after all. I think in many cases we're looking at things that we would like to save. Okay, let's at least get rid of your shield. We can do that much. And of course, it will continue to get stronger every turn because it has vitality, so there is reason to try to be quick. But I'm kind of waiting for you to play more cards out here, so we can, say, make a point of benefiting from Araka's Venom or Crimson Curse. Because I don't want to play Crimson Curse immediately in this row, and then our opponent just plays every other card in the opposite row, and we get almost nothing out of Crimson Curse. Now that you have other cards that are next to this, that could work. So whenever this unit loses its shield, it boosts itself by 2, which is a bit unfortunate. Their leader ability gives a shield, so they are likely to try to reapply that shield as soon as we take it down, so we want to make sure that we can get rid of this guy as soon as we get rid of that shield. So we say, poke it with Yennefer, which we actually don't know if Yennefer is going to hit you or you. We probably use you, and then follow up with some Araka's Venom. Yeah, we could do that, actually. Let's try that. So, 1 damage. Oh, you will get boosted further. I forgot about that part. Though, we do this, and, well, we need a little bit more damage than that. I messed up. We could use Parasite. I think that's overkill. Parasite would be enough to get rid of you, though. I didn't want to do it, but it does remove a card that they had invested a fair bit in, so rather not have to use a really strong card like that to do it, but I think we are still looking at a pretty significant advantage here. And Yennefer is some continued damage. The Arbalest can be if we have a few more cards with orders yet to play, and we do. We're gonna want to play Crimson Curse very soon, though, because there aren't very many turns remaining. So we want to get the full benefit out of that 5 turns. If you play that in the melee row, then that is definitely where we will put Crimson Curse. And I'm thinking you are about to do that. Okay, so you lose all your armor and damage an enemy unit by that amount. This is presumably the card that you were giving the additional armor way back in round 1. Okay, so decent play for sure. Though you did not give any additional strength to the Kedwani Cavalry, so we might be able to take that out here. If we were to say, well, Yennefer's going to hit you. She only damages the highest unit. I think either way we are going to want to use Crimson Curse here. Because otherwise, yeah, we are losing a turn out of it. At least it's affecting 2 cards. I would have loved if there were more that we were sure that this would affect. But we'll give it a shot. And of course, it also spawns Ekimaras on our row. Let's make sure we're damaging with Yennefer. We would love to take this guy out before it gets its shield back. Oh, speaking of shields. Okay, but that's on the other row. So this is a high base strength card. I'm thinking this is probably Gauntro Dim's target, because we can just outright delete it, and that's going to be something that's difficult to do with straightforward damage from Yennefer, because that would take a bunch of turns, and we just won't have enough time to pull that off. So yes, I'm thinking Gauntro Dim, you might even come next. Of course, if our opponent has, say, something like Purification, then they could remove the Doom that we apply here, and then that would mean that we would not be able to follow up for the kill, which would be unfortunate. Let's try to split our units a little bit between different rows. We give you Doomed. And, I mean, Yennefer's ability will remove the shield. Not going to do much for us here. And getting a little bit more bleed out of Blood Moon. Okay, so you're going with Kurak Frigate. I'm assuming you're probably going to play that in the range row to avoid this here. Yes, and you're giving that a shield. Okay, so what do we want to do now? We want to follow up with the kill. So that's big. Then, if we were to use Yennefer's ability, it would get rid of your shield. What else can we do here? We have more sources of damage. We also have War Council. We don't yet know what we're going to get out of it, so I'm thinking we maybe do go this route here. And, ooh, we want to make sure that we play Kedweni Revenant at a time when it can benefit from damaging a unit that has only 1 strength left, and we are close to being at that point now, though. So I'm thinking maybe we do put you down here, and remember that it will spawn another copy of it in the row. Let's make a point of putting it in a row where we have fewer units. Okay, and now, yes, that card is down to 1 strength, though I think the bleed will actually destroy it next turn. You can re-enable your leader ability with this card here. I'm assuming that just means it'll give you 1 additional charge, which is not a huge deal with that leader ability there. This is a much bigger deal when you have a one-time use, extremely powerful leader ability. So, not terribly concerned about that. And we are still looking at higher strength than our opponent right now. So, what do we do next? We do not, at the moment, have an enemy to target with Kedweni Revenant, who has 1 strength, so we'll save that. I want to make sure we have enough turns to pull this off. Let's play you now. So you have an order ability that will take a turn before we can use it. So now let's use Yennefer, remove the shield here, and we're going to hold off on you. So that'll be our turn. Things are looking decent here, but of course our opponent just reactivated their leader ability. Oh, they get all charges back. Okay, no, that is better than I expected that would be. That means lots more shields to come. That's a bit of damage there. Oh, but only when you played in the melee row? Okay, so that just seemed like a latent misplay there. I mean, sure, you may not have wanted to have played it, where we have Blood Moon active, but now you just can't use this card's ability, so that was odd. There are some cards that can change the row in which a unit is located, but they are somewhat rare. I do wonder if maybe you have one of those primed and ready to go. Okay. So this would damage the highest enemy unit by 3, which would mean, oh, damaging you, which is unfortunate. Probably want to remove the shield with you first. That way, if we were to activate this, we would actually be dealing some damage with this. Then I'm thinking next comes War Council, see what we get. Oh, we do seize the locked unit. Or no, lock an enemy unit with 5 or less power and seize it. What would we take? Would have loved to have taken that. We could have, set it up if we were to have used this first. But, of course, we didn't necessarily know we were going to draw into this. This is definitely the right choice. It's just a matter of what do we choose, and we're running out of time. We need to do it, like, right now. Okay. Take you. Sure. It means we will not have the opportunity to use your ability either, because when we seize it, it goes to the opposite row, so we'll have it in the range row. Does mean that we prevented you from, damage all enemy units by 1. Okay. So, one thing we can do here is, well, we'll see what our opponent does. This card is about to go down to 1 strength, so we could use that as the Kedweni Revenant target, so they should put a shield on that, though they didn't. That was a mistake. We do this, that gives us a Kedweni Revenant. Then we can do this, it will remove a shield from you, and then we can damage, damage by 3, and then damage adjacent units by 3 if we take it out. So I think what we do is damage you, get rid of the shield, then we do this on you. That will be a killing blow, so we'll damage the adjacent units as well. And then we use our last leader ability, I'm not sure it matters on who. So let's throw it on someone who would not get boosted up to 9 strength, just in case you happen to have a Geralt of Rivia in there. I'm doubtful that you would. But this is a pretty sizable lead at the moment. Damage unit by 3 if you control a unicorn. Do something else. Okay, you use all your abilities there, but still we hold on. So success for that match there. And yes, does seem as though the damage we have going on, it's quite effective. But let's give it another go, and we are going against Nilfgaard, kinda, sorta, this time around. So their leader ability, I believe that's the one that allows them to play a card from our hand, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Okay, so that is potentially something to bear in mind. There's not a lot we can do to plan around that other than try to get rid of our strongest cards early. We have 2 Dun Banners in our hand at the moment. That is not something we ever want to have. We'll get rid of you. You can seize the locked unit. We have other sources of lock, and we have a ton of ways to seize. Okay, then I think we get rid of you. You're not one of our stronger units. There's another way to lock. Okay, we have lots of lock here. That is definitely the theme. You can lock. You can lock. You lock and seize. You lock. You can lock. You destroy the highest base power unit. You play the top 3 cards from our deck, or well, we choose between them. You seize the locked unit. So, okay. You have an Elven Scout, which gets boosted every time you trigger a trap. So, does that mean we are likely to see more traps? Probably. So, we could lock you and prevent you from benefiting from that. We could destroy the highest base power unit, which would of course be you, because you're the only unit out there right now. Thinking that is probably the best way for us to go now, because this is just guaranteed to work. Whereas we hold on to it later on, we don't know. We might have the highest base strength power unit, or our opponent might. So let's do that. We know it'll work here, and I suspect that that was a unit that they very much were planning to build around. So to get rid of that might pull the chair out from under them. And, well, it is perhaps a good thing that we are going second in this round, because we have so many cards that are based on messing with our opponent. Okay, so that is clearly a trap of some variety. Question is, how do we play a card that does not get instantly destroyed by it? It could be a trap that deals 5 base damage to whatever unit we play, in which case we have nothing that would survive. So if that is the case, then we want to play one of our weakest units here, so that we don't throw away one of our best units. It could also be a trap that deals damage to everything on our side based on the total provision cost of the card that we play, in which case, again, we'd want to play a weak unit. So I'm thinking here, we have so much lock that we probably don't need a Van Morlehem Hunter. So I'm thinking it's probably you, or it could potentially be the Kidwani Revenant. We did manage to set it up a little bit last time around, but we mostly have lock, not damage here, so that's going to be easier said than done this time around. So I'm thinking we go with you, and I suspect you will get destroyed. This is the one that deals the damage based on the provision cost. And, I mean, either way, it was going to destroy whatever unit we played, so just wanted to make sure that we got rid of our weakest unit there, rather than throwing away something like you. I mean, most of our units just lock. This one has a little bit higher base strength than our other locking units, but is still quite similar. Okay, so you get boosted if you control only elves. And of course, with that being the only unit you have out there, yes, by definition, you control only elves. What I'm wondering, though, is do we lock you immediately? Do we lock and damage you? Do we seize you and lock along the way? We can lock this way, we can lock this way. Basically, how do we want to lock them is the question. So we could, oh, tell you what, we might actually want to use the Purify on Kurt here. I'm thinking we lock, seize, and then Purify to unlock the unit that we take. That might not be best done with you, though, because by playing Kurt, we are playing a non-elf. So I think for that reason, let's actually use Dimeridium Shackles. We'll lock you, we'll deal some damage. You do still have 1 strength remaining, but I'm thinking that's not going to be a huge difference maker there. And I'm thinking we probably would prefer lock a different unit instead. Do we have any organic cards in our deck? Do we want this? Well, I mean... Huh. Well, you get to damage a unit by 6, except we don't have any right now. Though you can also boost a unit by 6. Okay, and you went the Roach route. Another card that can raid the battlefield when you play a gold unit. And yeah, you got 3 of them, much like we saw with some other units, much like that. Now that this has 7 strength, it is still locked. We could still seize it. It is more tempting to do so this time around. So, I mean, of course they didn't know that we are holding on to a card that might be able to seize this, but that means that that was not the right card to do that to. So, do we do that now? We certainly could. I think we may want to. Because I don't think we're going to get any higher base strength out of any other card that we seize. Though this does take a turn to pull off. Yeah, I think we still go for it. So it's probably going to be the highest base strength card that we can seize. The question would have been, might there be another card that has other abilities that we'd like to have that we could seize instead? And there's certainly the chance that could have happened. But we just don't know. So we'll play it a little bit safe here. And it looks like they may have damage. Yeah, they're going to lock us. Which, well, we could Purify. We could Purify with Kurt. We were thinking of maybe purifying you once we seize you. But that probably doesn't make a lot of sense because we have a non-elf here, so we're not going to get the additional bonus from having only elves. So I'm thinking we play you in the range row to purify you, then... Oh, except you still need to be in the melee row. Ah, I forgot about that. Okay, so that was absolutely misplay in that case. That was absolutely misplay. So not only was the lock a big deal here, the move to the other row was actually even bigger. Okay, so in that case, this is not looking so good here. I'm thinking we probably do want to pass immediately, because our opponent has played one more card than we have. So we will carry over a little bit of a card advantage. Of course, we will lose round 1 here, but we're hoping that that is enough of a difference maker that we can benefit from that in rounds 2 and or 3. And the other thing is that part of the reason why they have so much strength at the moment is that they had Roach raid the battlefield here, and Roach will go back to their graveyard, and so they will not be able to do that again. That is one reason why they benefited in particular this time around, and they will not be able to benefit from that in the future. So I think, for that reason, not too concerned yet. The thing I'm most concerned about is actually that we played some of our best cards there in that round, and we, of course, did still lose, but our opponent did as well. So I'm thinking we should certainly at least be able to take one round out of this, because our opponent might pass a little bit early, realizing that they certainly have card disadvantage here. But taking both rounds, that will be a bit of a challenge. And what cards do we want to get here? We don't yet have Yennefer, or Gaunter or Dim, or Crimson Curse, or Parasite. Those are probably the ones we are most looking forward to getting. So I'm thinking we get rid of you. Assassination is okay. Spores... All God, I mean, in round 1, would have been fantastic. I'm just not sure we have enough patience to be able to make this happen. Well, now we certainly do. So, tell you what. We have 8 cards. We will draw 3 at the beginning of the next round, meaning that we can play 1 right now and still be at the maximum. What 1 card do we really want to play that will set us up for the future? All God. Absolutely All God. So, turns out, it worked perfectly. So what do we want to boost? I mean, we'd love to get Yennefer, so I'm thinking we probably go for her. Either her, Gaunter or Dim, and or what would the last one be? Maybe the Battering Ram? Sure. Then we will end our turn, and we will pass. So we do win the round there, and this means that we are both going into round 3 with the maximum number of cards, so... That's all we could have asked for, really, after what happened in round 1. And we know that we've already gotten rid of one of their best setups. When we drew into 2 of our boosted cards there, so that's great. Thinking we do probably still want to get rid of Spores. Gunbaron, do we have? We do have one of you, so we definitely don't want to have another. The Arbalist, that's okay. So we missed on Crimson Curse, Gaunter, and the Parasite. Those would have been the cards that we were fishing for. Probably would have preferred those to the Battering Ram. But we saw previously that the Valyrian Arbalist is good if we can play you early and benefit from getting more charges from playing other cards that have orders. Could also potentially draw into one of those cards we were saying we wanted with War Council. That's another thing to bear in mind. So I'm thinking we lead off with you, though. That we have as many cards as possible that we play afterward that also have orders. We don't really know if we want to play in the melee or range row. We want to play in the melee row if we're expecting Northern Realms cards. Range row if we're expecting Nilfgaardian cards. Of course, you have a Nilfgaardian leader, kinda, sorta, but we don't know what your deck is, so let's just play in the melee row here. And we do still have all of our leader ability. They have theirs. Theirs is, of course, remember, that they can play 1 card from our hand. When they do that, they can only choose between 3 random cards in our hand. So if they were to do it right now, they would have to pick between, well, some random 3. They might choose between some cards that are not so great, or they could get really lucky and be able to choose between Yennefer and Vigo's Muzzle and whatnot. So for that reason, we probably do want to try to play other good cards early. I think we can make that happen now. So we play with Yennefer here. Deal some damage to you, and Yennefer will... Oh, actually, we have 2 of those charges now, because Yennefer has orders, therefore it gives you another charge. So that's looking good. We could potentially use Carapace to boost you further. Might not be a bad idea, because we do want to keep you alive as long as possible so that we can get more charges. Let's try that. We definitely want to save 1 charge at least for the Dun Banner, so we can summon the rest from our deck. That is the advantage that we held on to, saved it for round 3, that our opponent used immediately. Okay, so both people destroy their lowest cards. I mean, we did still hold on to Yennefer, so I'll take that. Does mean that the leader ability that we used, that was perhaps invested a little bit in vain, but it's not a huge problem. And other things that we want to play early on. Let's see, if we were to use War Council and draw into something like Crimson Curse, we would want to get fairly early, but that is still, I mean, we'd want to play that in a row in which we know there are going to be opposing units, and we don't have any opposing units out there yet. So I think we do still wait on that. This is one issue with our current deck, is a lot of it is based on countering our opponent, so when our opponent has no cards out there, there's not a lot for us to do. I think we start with Dunbanner here, and we will use our other Carapace here, or at least one of our other Carapaces, to summon the rest from our deck. Because that one doesn't require that our opponent is doing anything. Most of our other stuff is based on damage or lock. Okay, so they have more traps. So again, this could be, well, we know it's not going to be the card that deals damage. Well, I would say normally we'd know it's not the card that deals damage based on the provision cost of the unit you play here. However, in this game mode, I think you can have duplicate cards, so it is possible that they have another. Otherwise, it could just be 5 damage. And if it were 5 damage, then we could play something like the Battering Ram, and we would still survive it. It would also deal 5 damage to everyone else if it were the card that dealt damage based on the provision cost, but the provision cost is 5. Alternatively, well, again, we don't have anything to target with any of our damage, so I think we almost need to play this here. Let's go for it. See what it is. Okay, nothing immediately. And I think what that means is that is probably the trap that deals 2 damage to every unit in a row, based on whichever row has the most units in it. We have tons of traps. We don't know what that one is. Yep, that is exactly what that one was. Dealt some damage to our Dunbanners. I mean, still, they'd need some strength out themselves, of course. But this is getting tricky because we need some stuff to target here. This needs a target. This needs a target. This, I mean, we would get 3 strength if we were to play it, yes, but we'd ideally like to block or bleed someone. We, of course, can't seize anyone if there's no one to seize, and we'd get 4 strength out of this, which is not terrible, but again, we'd, of course, love to actually lock something. So that means that War Council is potentially our best option here, but it depends what we draw into. It could be Gonzalo Dim, in which case, if we don't get the chance to doom anyone, then his order ability to destroy a doomed enemy is almost meaningless, unless they happen to play another doomed enemy themselves. Parasite would also not work so well if there's no target, so I think we're just going based on whatever has the highest base strength, and that's probably you. So it's not ideal. Okay, and that also dealt damage based on the provision costs. Passier. And this was a fairly low provision cost card, so still not bad. How many traps do you have? Too many is the answer. I'm thinking this time... Okay. Oh, okay, you played a card from our hand. You're going with War Council. So we did fortunately get rid of Yennefer, because that probably would have been the best card that they could have played. Oh, they have Feigned Death, which is the Scoia'tael scenario. Fortunately, that means we finally have a target for us to hit with our damage. And they didn't pick up Vigo's Muzzle, or if they did have that as one of the options with their leader ability, they opted not to use it. So that was great. Yennefer would have been too strong for them to have seized her, so that's good. That probably would have been quite bad if that had happened. So we could immediately delete you with Assassination, though I'm not sure that's necessary, because we have 3 damage here as soon as we use this, and 1 damage from Yennefer, so we could immediately destroy you with this combo. We could save Battering Ram, though, if we wanted to, and say instead do something like lock you. I'm thinking we just lock you, or I mean, we could seize you as well, but you're not exactly a very powerful unit, at least not for us, so let's make sure we play in the range row to lock. Then we can deal damage with Yennefer, because that is... Oh, I forgot we had one of those. But again, that was another trap that dealt damage based on the provision cost of the unit we played, and we played a 4 provision cost unit, so that was still the right choice to make there. And Feigned Death advances whenever they play an elf, so they are, yes, likely to play more elves here. And what is next one, when they play their next elf, would be Waylay, which deals, what, 3 damage, and if it takes someone out, then they can spawn another elf, and there are certainly people they could take out with it. So, I'm thinking, well, they would have loved to have had this Elven Scout out earlier when they had all these traps to trigger. They may have a few more, but I would be doubtful at this stage. I mean, how many can they possibly have, right? But we could also, we could use a Raucous Venom to take you out. Oh, and they forfeited. I was going to say use a Raucous Venom, take you out with 3 damage, and that would have dealt 3 damage to the neighboring opponents there, and so would have deleted everything in that row there. And perhaps they may have seen that when they were using their leader ability to see what we had in our hand, but otherwise they were just saying, nope, couldn't pull it off, so they forfeited. That's 2 victories with this deck here, and yes, seems like we had to play it patiently there, until finally they did play some cards that we could damage, but ultimately it did work out for us. Alright, and there's a look at the new draft game mode. It is a beta, so I'm curious what they might consider changing there. Looks like we managed to build ourselves a pretty solid deck, and I had a lot of fun with it. I hope you did too. So if you're interested in seeing more of this game mode, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. That way you can catch me next time we continue our run with this deck here. Hope you had fun, and I'll catch you next time.